The world exploded into a wall of liquid fire. One moment I was running full tilt through the jungle, the shouts of my brothers in arms echoing in my ears. The next, a fighter jet screamed overhead, and the sky turned a sickening orange-yellow. A wave of impossible heat slammed into me, a physical blow that stole the air from my lungs and set my world ablaze. I hit the ground, but instinct screamed louder than pain. I scrambled back to my feet, a living torch, and ran. I was trying to outrun the fire, trying to shed the flames that clung to my skin like a second malevolent being. My gear felt like it was melting into my chest. Every piece of ammunition I carried, 200 rounds for the M60, bandoliers for my M16, magazines, grenades, felt like a tiny bomb waiting to go off. I had to get it off. I had to get free. I saw my friend Albarada, his face a mask of horror. I threw myself to the ground at his feet, a desperate, silent plea for help. I was in a ball of fire, and all I could think was, "Amigo, put me out." It seems like a lifetime ago that I first stepped off that plane, a world away from the fire that would nearly claim me. We landed first at a camp called Enlock, then a helicopter took us to Da Nang. That was when the reality of the war hit me. This wasn't a training exercise, it was another world entirely. The air was thick with the smells of mud, diesel, and something else, something vaguely metallic and unsettling. Tanks churned through the muck, their engines a constant angry growl. Everywhere I looked, I saw men who looked like they'd been carved from the very earth they stood on. They were covered in filth, their uniforms stained dark with sweat and grime. Not a single man was smiling. Their faces were long and tired, their eyes holding a distant, haunted look that I would come to understand all too well. It was a look of pure exhaustion, of men who had seen too much and fought too long. In that moment, the fear that I'd suppressed for so long began to stir. I looked down at my own clean uniform and felt like a child who had wandered into a place meant only for old, weary men. It put a scare in you, a deep, primal fear that no amount of bravado or training could prepare you for. I didn't care how tough you thought you were. When you saw the faces of those grunts in Da Nang, you got scared. The fear was real, and it was coming for you. A sergeant's eyes found me in the crowd of new arrivals. He pointed a grimy finger, his voice cutting through the noise. He wanted to know my name, Aguilera. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. He knew who I was, the kid who broke the machine gun record. He didn't ask. He stated it as a fact, a label that had followed me all the way here. He told me he wanted me in his truck. I jumped in, surrounded by supplies, explosives, and the heavy, unmistakable shape of an M60 machine gun. From the mud of Da Nang, they took us straight into the heart of it, to a place called Khe Sanh. When we got to Khe Sanh, the feeling of unreality only deepened. The guys there were just as dirty as the ones in Da Nang, but they had something else written on their backs, on their helmets and flak jackets. It was a single word: caution. A grim joke, a warning to the world, or maybe to themselves. One of the veterans saw me looking, saw how clean I still was. He laughed, a short, harsh sound with no humor in it. He asked if I was fresh out of boot camp. I admitted I was. He gestured to the grimy Marines around us and told me to take a good look, because in a week, I'd look just like them. He walked away laughing, and I laughed with him, but inside I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. A bad joke from a sorry man, I told myself, but a part of me knew he was right. From the main base, they pointed to a nearby hill. That was where we were going, Hill 181 South. It didn't look like much from a distance, just another mound of dirt and rock. I slung my M16, grabbed 2 boxes of ammo, and started the climb. I was in good shape, and the hike up wasn't difficult. At the top, a captain and a fire team leader named Larson were waiting. Larson was a Yankee, and he had that loud, abrasive way about him that I immediately disliked. He looked me up and down, a tough guy sizing up the new meat. He told the captain he wanted the new tough guy on his fire team. I met his gaze and didn't back down. I told him straight, the same way he talked to me, that I came here to do one of 2 things: kill or be killed. I told him not to mess with me. That seemed to change his tone. He introduced himself as Larson. I told him my name was Aguilera. The captain, seeing my M16 was set to full automatic, warned Larson to leave me be. that I looked like I was ready to blow his head off. Larson backed off, saying he was just joking around. In that moment, a strange sort of respect was born. We understood each other. Our job was simple: hold that hill. We didn't patrol, we didn't move. We dug in and we waited. The enemy had hit the hill just the night before we arrived, killing 19 Marines. The evidence of the fight was still fresh. The ground was stained dark in places, and the air still held the sharp scent of gunpowder. Body bags lay in a quiet, orderly row, a stark reminder of what we were up against. Seeing the blood still on the ground, changed me. The kid who had arrived in Vietnam was gone. In his place was a man who understood that this was real, that this was how people died. A fuse in my head was lit. I became hyper-aware, my senses sharpened to a razor's edge. You couldn't sneak up on me after that, not even in my sleep. I was no longer a kid from the neighborhood. I was a soldier on a battlefield, and I would not take nonsense from anyone, not even an officer. Respect had its limits in a place where a stupid order could get you killed. When you're in the thick of it, you have to treat each other like human beings, because one day your life might depend on it. I knew then that I would have to kill to survive, and when that time came, I would do it. The first time is the hardest. There's a guilt that comes with taking a life, but the man in front of you is trying to do the same thing to you, so you do it, and the next time, it gets easier and easier until it's just pow, 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 like hunting. You lose feeling for the man in your sights. He is the enemy, and you will kill him first. That is the man war turns you into. My first direct contact with the enemy on that hill wasn't a firefight. It was in the dead of night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. I saw movement down below, a slow, crawling shape in the darkness. "Enemy!" I hollered, and everyone scrambled for the bunkers. The captain came over, peering into the night, but couldn't see anything. I pointed, guiding his binoculars until he finally saw him. The captain muttered something about how he didn't even need the fancy optics as long as he had me. He called in an airstrike. A 500-pound bomb dropped on the enemy position, the explosion a deafening roar that shook the very hill we stood on. I was watching the aftermath when I saw them. Black spots, pieces of shrapnel, arcing through the air directly toward us. "Incoming! Get down!" I yelled. The captain dove just as a piece of twisted metal whistled past where his head had been. He looked at me, amazed that I had seen it coming from so far away. Back then, my eyesight was perfect. I could see a man a mile away and know if he was the enemy. We held that hill for 2 weeks. Another company came to relieve us, and as our helicopters lifted off, the enemy started shooting at us from the jungle. We fired back, laughing like madmen as we flew away, the adrenaline of survival surging through us. Back at the base, we were told there would be a ceremony for the 19 men who had been killed on Hill 181. The company commander stood before us, first leading a prayer, then reading the names one by one. There was a 21-gun salute, and the lonely, mournful sound of a trumpet playing taps echoed across the base. Every man there walked away with a long, sad face. I stood there thinking that the next time, it could be my name they were calling. Next time, it would be me. They told us we would have 3 days of rest, but you learn quickly not to believe anything they tell you. The very next morning, at 4 o'clock, they woke us up for hot chow and loaded us onto helicopters. Our destination was a secret. We were heading for the Ho Chi Minh Trail, deep inside Laos. The rule was, don't ask, don't tell. Don't ask where you are, and don't tell anyone where you've been. As the choppers descended, the ground below looked like a teeming anthill. It looked like they were dropping us right into the middle of an enemy army. The moment our boots hit the ground, we were fighting. The air was thick with bullets. Our helicopter gunners laid down suppressing fire, and I could hear the thud of their rounds hitting enemy soldiers. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the enemy broke and ran. That's when the airstrike came. For the first time, I saw napalm dropped in combat. What the cook back at the first camp had told me came rushing back. A massive rolling ball of fire erupted from the jungle, consuming everything in its path. It was an unbelievable, terrifying sight. We spent 30 days on that trail, being dropped from one hot zone to another, fighting constantly. When it was over, they brought us back to the base. We were promised 4 days of relaxation, but that turned out to be another lie. A two-star general, a man named Lewis, was visiting, and he wanted a show. He knew I was there, the Marine who had broken the machine gun record, and he wanted to see me in action. Larson, my Yankee squad leader, set up the M60 on a tripod. The targets were old artillery shell boxes, set up hundreds of yards away. I got behind the gun, ranged it in, and let loose a burst. I didn't just hit the target, I cut it clean in half. I swung the gun to the next one and did the same. The other guys were cheering, making a racket. Then the general himself walked over. He was a short man, not much taller than me. He looked from me to the massive M60 and remarked that the weapon was as big as I was. I agreed that it was just about. He then made me an offer. He wanted me to be his personal machine gunner. For a moment, I was speechless. How do you say no to a general? But then I looked past him, at my squad, at the 5th Marines, my brothers. I asked him how I could better serve my country, by being with him or by staying with the 5th Marines. He smiled. He knew what I was saying. He told me to stay with the 5th. The captain, who was standing nearby, laughed. He told the general that I was a hell of a man and that if he had more Marines like me, they could win the war in a week. I looked out at the sprawling, chaotic base of Da Nang and knew I couldn't leave. I wouldn't betray my men, turn my back on them when they were walking into hell. They were my brothers. Where they fought, I would fight. Where they fell, I would fall. The man who had first arrived in this country was gone forever. I had changed. That reputation followed me. The helicopter pilots who had seen me shoot wanted me as their door gunner. Every time we had to fly somewhere, they'd call me over, telling me to get in their chopper. On one flight, we were approaching a landing zone when I saw a group of about 10 enemy soldiers kneeling in the tree line, aiming their weapons, waiting to ambush us as we landed. They were still far off, but I saw them. I swung the M60 around and opened fire. The dirt all around them jumped and kicked up as 100 rounds slammed into their position. The helicopter gunner was ecstatic, yelling over the radio for everyone to see what I had done. He was in awe. I was doing things in that chopper that made them all want me as their permanent gunner, but I always refused. My place was on the ground, with the 5th Marines. That was my family. We operated close to the border of Cambodia, in territory that was thick with the enemy. One day we were on a hill, and the North Vietnamese regulars were supposedly all around us. I was looking around on high alert when I saw the strangest thing. A man was walking calmly up the hill towards our position. He wasn't crawling or taking cover. He was just walking, as if he were out for a stroll. Larson and the other guys were all looking the other way and didn't even see him. He walked right through their lines of sight. He climbed the hill with no effort, his steps light and steady. He came and stood close to me, and I saw that he was a Catholic priest. He wore no helmet, no flak jacket, no cartridge belt. He carried no weapon, no canteens, not a single piece of gear needed for survival in the field. We were in heavy enemy territory and this man was completely unarmed. I greeted him and asked where his weapon was. He reached into his simple robe and pulled out a Bible. This, he said, was his weapon. I was stunned. This had to be the bravest man in the entire Marine Corps. He smiled, then turned and started walking down the other side of the hill. Larson called out to me then, some stupid Yankee insult, and I turned to answer him back. When I turned back to look for the priest, maybe only a second or two later, he was gone, vanished. I ran to the other side of the hill and asked the guys there if they had seen a priest come through. They looked at me like I was crazy. There was no priest there, they said. The encounter changed me again. My fear of the enemy, my fear of death, it all just fell away. I didn't care about the enemy anymore. I respected their skill, but I no longer feared them. Instead, something new awakened in me, a kind of sixth sense. At night on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, I could feel them coming. I could sense their presence in the dark. I'd pull the pin on a grenade and toss it out into the blackness. The next morning, we'd find the bodies of 1 or 2 enemy scouts. Larson started to trust this sense of mine. He hated it when I would tell him, "They're here," because every time I said it, it turned out to be true. This newfound sense was confirmed by an unlikely source. In the villages we passed through, I kept encountering the same young Vietnamese man. Everywhere I went, he was there. He would run up to me, calling me Marine Number 1, and give me a hug. I didn't smoke, so I always had extra cigarettes from my C rations, and I would give him a pack. He hated the partisans and the Northern regulars. They had killed his entire family. He became my informer. He would tell me where the enemy was hiding, pointing them out in the jungles. He was in every village, a ghost of a boy who seemed to be everywhere at once. One day he ran up to me for his usual greeting when gunfire erupted from the tree line. I shoved him into a ditch and returned fire. It was a brief, violent exchange, and then the enemy fighters melted back into the jungle. They never stood and fought. They shot and ran. That was their way. The war exposed you to the extremes of humanity, the heights of bravery and the depths of cruelty. The enemy I hated, the one I fought and killed without remorse, but I could not stand to see suffering inflicted on the innocent. That anger fueled me in battle. We were pinned down on a hill by an enemy machine gunner. 4 or 5 of our guys were already wounded. The insurgent would stand up, fire a burst that sent everyone diving for cover, and then drop back down. I had had enough. I rushed straight at him. He missed me twice as I scrambled up the hill. He threw a grenade that exploded only a few feet from me, showering me with dirt and gunpowder. Another Marine, a Mexican kid like me, yelled out in Spanish that he would cover me, that we should go kick the enemy's tail. Before he could move, another grenade landed. I shoved him out of the way just as it exploded next to his leg. He went rolling down the hill, yelling for me to live or die. I was close now. The enemy was in a small dugout. I couldn't get a clear shot. I emptied my M16 magazine into his position, leaving just 1 round. Larson got up to fire, but his M16 jammed. He never cleaned the thing, and it infuriated me. He yelled that the enemy was still moving. I told him I only had 1 round left. "That's all I need," he screamed. I threw him my rifle. He shot. Then he threw a grenade into the dugout for good measure. I went in and pulled the man out. There was another one behind him that I hadn't seen. His rifle fell right in front of me. Its barrel split open from an explosion. My mind was racing. That was the 4th or 5th time a weapon had exploded or jammed right when it was about to be used on me. I was still here. I pulled the second body out. I was going through their gear, looking for intelligence when I found a map. It was a detailed drawing of our own position, the village, the bridge, the camp. The captain came over and started chewing me out for my recklessness. A blind rage boiled up in me. I looked him in the eye and let loose everything I thought about his cowardice and foolishness, mincing no words. I had risked my life to take out the threat that had pinned us all down, and all he could do was yell at me. I shoved the map into his hand. He stopped yelling. He didn't know what to say. He just stuffed the map into his vest and mumbled for me to keep up the good work. Everyone who heard it started laughing. It wasn't funny to me. I had risked my life, and he hadn't even recognized it. The lieutenant went over to Larson, who had a small scratch, and told him he could probably get a Purple Heart for it. Larson cursed him out. He told the lieutenant to go talk to me if he wanted to see what real fighting looked like. The lieutenant never said a word to me. It was always like that. The Mexican and black guys, we were never recognized for what we did. Our next mission took us to the demilitarized zone. There was a bridge there that the enemy was using, but they were clever. They had built a second bridge just underneath the surface of the water. I spotted it, and Larson pointed it out to the captain. We set up on a hill overlooking the supply route, ready to spring an ambush. We waited for what felt like an eternity. An hour, then an hour and a half passed. I told Larson that we should put some guys on the backside of the hill in case we were hit from behind. He agreed and ran to tell the captain. It was a strange feeling, being the illiterate kid from the barrio, and being the one who could figure out what the North Vietnamese were going to do next. The captain sent a few men to the rear. They found a massive tunnel complex built into the mountain. The demolition guys went in and planted timed explosives. We pulled back to base and watched a movie. At exactly 12 o'clock, we all turned and looked to the northwest. We heard 2 massive booms, one after another, as half the mountain collapsed in on itself. Near Cambodia again, we were part of a large operation. Charlie Company was there, along with Foxtrot and Lima. There were Huey helicopters everywhere, but one stood out. It was a brand new, shiny command chopper. The captain joked that we shouldn't get too close because they looked too pretty to be going to war. As we were watching a nearby hill, I saw a North Vietnamese soldier emerge from a bunker. I yelled, "Enemy!" and called for a sniper. The sniper I wanted was a hillbilly from back home, a guy we called Wild Bill. He was the best shot I had ever seen. When we graduated from training, he had broken the record on the rifle range, just as I had with the machine gun. We were good buddies. I ran to get him. There was a sniper in a bush, and I wanted Wild Bill to take him out. He came over, talking in that funny way of his that always made us laugh. He saw the sniper. He told me to wait for him to make one more move. He fired. He wasn't sure if he hit him. We found the sniper lying on his back. We took his rifle and his samurai sword. We had done a good job, but the whole thing felt like a show. The media was there, taking pictures of us climbing the hill, making it look like some grand victory. It was a joke. It was what I called a purple gun day, all for show, for medals that meant nothing. Finally, my time in the Inferno came to a close. The day before it happened, we were getting ready for a search and destroy mission. As we approached the village, a voice spoke to me, clear as day, right in front of my face. It was in Spanish. Aguilera, mira arriba. Aguilera, look up. I spun around, startled. No one was there. My friend Albarada didn't speak Spanish. I kept walking, and I heard it again. Aguilera, look up. I looked up, and my blood ran cold. Two 250-pound bombs were falling directly at me. They looked like they would land right on my head. I screamed, incoming, airstrike, get out of the way. The bombs sailed over my head, landing maybe 200 feet away and burying themselves in the earth. I threw myself to the ground just as they exploded. The left side of my head went completely deaf. I got up and saw my platoon frozen in shock. We had to move. I started running, full blast. But then, for some reason, I stopped. I couldn't make myself go on. I turned and saw a Marine named Anderson behind me, looking lost. I yelled and pointed for him to go to his right, where the other men were. But he just stood there, frozen. I was furious. I ran back, called him every dirty name I could think of, and physically shoved him towards safety. I stepped on a barbed wire fence that hadn't been there a moment before and pushed him forward. He started running, and so did I. As I ran, I could feel the vibration of another fighter jet in my chest before I heard it, and that's when my world became fire. The napalm covered me. Albarada threw dirt on me, smothering the flames, his hands working frantically. When the fire was out, I saw our M60s lying on the ground. The enemy was hitting us. I screamed for him to get the gun. We ran for the village where our guys were already in a firefight. I wanted to kill that pilot. I reached for the M60, but I couldn't grab it. My hand wouldn't work. I looked down. All the skin on my right hand had been burned away. I couldn't move my fingers. I looked at my arms. They were a hideous patchwork of black and white. I looked at my chest, my legs, all burned. That's when I knew how bad it was. But there was no pain, just a cold, boundless anger. I wasn't going to die. I was just furious. Everything started to get dark. Albarada grabbed me by the few hairs left on my head, trying to keep me conscious. He told me not to go to sleep, that I was going to die. I looked at him and told him, they got me. Anderson came over and Albarada turned on him, screaming that it was his fault. I told him no, it was my fault. I was the one who went back for him. I would have done it for any of them. A medic gave me a shot of morphine, and the pain still didn't come. A helicopter landed, a .50 caliber machine gun providing cover. They loaded me on. The gunner saw me and was shocked. This is Aguilera? They just shot the best machine gunner we've got in the damn Marine Corps. He yelled into his radio, cussing out the pilots. I could see my men on the ground below, so far away, all of them standing and looking up at me. The air in the helicopter was cold, and it felt good on my burned skin. Then they dropped me in Da Nang. The moment they moved me from the helicopter to a jeep, the pain hit. It was a terrible, all-consuming agony. I screamed, I cursed. A Catholic priest prayed over me as they covered me in a cold white cream. I was talking in Spanish, cussing them out, telling them to take me back to the battlefield. I didn't want to die there. They put IVs in my feet. It was the only place that wasn't burned. First, second, and third degree burns covered my body. A nurse gave me another shot, and then everything went black. I was leaving the world of mud and blood, fire and death. The boy who had arrived so long ago was gone, burned away, leaving a man I no longer recognized in his place. I was going home.